He was the greatest trader who ever lived. At his peak, he was worth over $100 million, the equivalent of more than $1.5 billion today. He called market crashes before they happened. He shorted the 1929 collapse and made $100 million in a single day while the rest of the world was losing everything. And then he lost it all. Twice. Not because the markets turned against him. Not because his strategy failed. Not because he ran out of opportunity. He lost everything because he broke his own rules. That's the untold truth about Jesse Livermore. The man who knew exactly what to do and couldn't stop himself from doing the opposite. And today, we're going to unpack exactly why. Because buried inside Livermore's story is the most important lesson any trader will ever learn. A lesson about the one enemy no chart can warn you about. But before we get into it, where are you watching from right now? Drop your country and your city in the comments. I love seeing traders from every corner of the world come together here. And while you're at it, hit that like button, share this with a trader who needs to hear this, and subscribe to Trading Psychology Lab, because this channel is where the market meets the mind. Now, let's talk about the man who knew better than anyone alive and still destroyed himself. Most traders believe that if they just learn enough, if they study long enough, lose enough, get hurt enough, eventually something will click. Eventually, they'll figure it out. Eventually, the lessons will stick. Jesse Livermore destroyed that idea completely. Here was a man who started trading at 14 years old in the bucket shops of Boston. By 15, he had turned $5 into $1,000 through pure feel for price movement. By his early 20s, he was already being banned from bucket shops across the East Coast because he was beating them too consistently. He didn't just learn from losses. He wrote the lessons down. He codified them. He built a complete personal rulebook from decades of hard experience. Rules like, never add to a losing position. Never trade against the trend. Never act on tips or rumors. Let your winners run. He knew. He genuinely, deeply knew. And yet, he broke every single one of those rules. Repeatedly. Deliberately. And it cost him everything. This is the truth most traders are not ready to hear. Knowledge is not the problem. Rules are not the problem. The problem is the space between knowing and doing. That gap, that invisible, terrifying gap, is where fortunes are lost. And Jesse Livermore lived his entire life falling into it. Let's go back to 1906. Livermore is in his late 20s. He's already made and lost a fortune once. He's rebuilt. He's sharp. He's confident. One afternoon, something tells him to short the Union Pacific Railroad. No news. No data. Just a feeling, what he later called a hunch with a history. An internal signal built from years of reading the market's behavior. He acts on it. Days later, the San Francisco earthquake hits. Union Pacific collapses. Livermore walks away with a massive profit. He trusted himself. He followed his instinct, which was really just his rules operating below the surface. And it worked. But then 1907 arrives. Markets are crashing. Livermore is positioned perfectly, shorting the collapse, printing money while the financial world burns around him. At the peak of his trade, J.P. Morgan himself sends a personal message to Livermore. He begs him to stop shorting, to cover his positions, to help stabilize the market. And Livermore, at the height of his power, at the exact moment his rules said hold the position, covers. He walks away from potentially the greatest trade of his life out of social pressure. Out of ego. Out of wanting to be seen as the man who helped save Wall Street. He broke his rule. And he knew at the moment he did it. Now fast forward to 1929. Livermore is older, wiser, battle-scarred. He sees the crash coming months in advance. He builds one of the largest short positions in history. When the market finally collapses in October, Livermore makes $100 million in a single day. He is untouchable. He is the king. And within 3 years, he is broke. How? The same way he had gone broke before. He started taking tips from friends. He added to losing positions. He traded on emotion instead of his rules. He ignored every lesson he had ever learned. Same man. Same knowledge. Same rules. Completely different behavior. And that is the brutal truth at the heart of Livermore's story. Knowing your rules means nothing if you cannot follow them when it matters most. Here's what nobody talks about when they tell the Livermore story. It wasn't weakness that broke him. It wasn't stupidity. It wasn't bad luck. It was a success. Every time Livermore made a massive win, Every time the market validated him, something shifted inside his psychology. The winds fed his ego. An inflated ego is the most dangerous thing a trader can carry into the market. Because when your ego is running the show, you stop following rules and start following feelings. You stop executing a process and start trying to prove something. You trade to be right, not to be profitable. And those are two completely different games. Think about what that means for you right now. How many times have you had a good week, maybe your best week in months, and then immediately taken a trade you had no business taking? How many times has a winning streak made you feel invincible, only for the market to remind you, painfully, that you are not? That is the Livermore trap. And it gets every trader at some point. But here's the other side of it. Livermore also broke his rules out of fear. After big losses, he would freeze. He would hesitate on setups that met every criteria of his system. He would second-guess entries he had executed 100 times before. He would sit on the sidelines while his own strategy ran without him. Fear and ego. Two opposite emotions. Both are equally destructive. Both pointing to the same root cause. A trader who had lost connection with his rules and started operating from his feelings. This is what Richard Dennis understood when he built the Turtle system. He knew that even the most experienced traders, maybe especially the most experienced traders, were vulnerable to this. That is why his system was mechanical. That is why the rules were non-negotiable. Because the moment you give yourself permission to deviate once, just once, you have opened a door that is very hard to close. Livermore never had a Dennis in his life. He had no external system, no accountability, no mechanical rules to anchor him when his psychology went sideways. He only had himself. And sometimes that is not enough. Ask yourself honestly right now. Are you trading your rules or are you trading your mood? Are you executing your system or are you executing your feelings? Because the market does not care how you feel. It only responds to what you do. And what you do, trade after trade, day after day, is either building a disciplined identity or slowly dismantling one. Here is the part of the Livermore story that should shake every trader to their core. He wrote it all down. In 1923, Livermore essentially dictated his entire trading philosophy, his rules, his mistakes, his insights, and it was published as one of the most famous trading books ever written. He documented exactly what he did wrong. He explained in precise detail why he kept losing. He understood his own psychology with a clarity that most traders never reach. And then he went out and did it all again. He broke the rules he had written down. He repeated the mistakes he had publicly documented. He lived the very patterns he had warned others against. This is the paradox that should haunt every trader. Understanding your problem is not the same as solving it. Reading about discipline is not the same as having it. Knowing the right move is not the same as making it. The gap between knowledge and execution is not filled with more information. It is filled with repetition, with accountability, with a system that removes the decision from your hands in the moments when your psychology is most compromised. Livermore had the knowledge. He never built the system to protect himself from himself. And that is why, in November of 1940, Jesse Livermore, the greatest trader of his generation, a man who had touched $100 million, walked into a hotel in New York and ended his life, having lost everything for the fourth time. The market did not kill Jesse Livermore. His inability to follow his own rules did. So here we are. We have walked through the rise and fall of the most talented trader who ever lived. A man who knew more about markets than almost anyone before or since. A man who wrote the rules, broke the rules, paid the price, and then did it all over again. And the lesson is not to feel sorry for Livermore. The lesson is to see yourself in him. Because every trader has a little Livermore inside them. The part that knows exactly what to do, and does the opposite anyway. The part that breaks rules under pressure. The part that lets ego call the shots after a big win. The part that freezes after a painful loss. The difference between you and Livermore is not talent. It is structure. Livermore was a lone genius with no guardrails. You have access to something he never did, the ability to build a system with hard rules, to create external accountability, to study your own psychology before the market forces you to. So here is your challenge. Right now, today, write down the 3 rules you break most often in your trading. Not the rules you follow, the ones you break. Be brutally honest. Nobody is watching. Write them down. Post them somewhere you will see them before every single trading session. And for the next 30 days, treat breaking any one of those rules as an automatic end to your trading day. No exceptions. No negotiations. No second chances. Because discipline is not built in the moments when trading is easy. It is built in the moments when breaking your rules feels completely justified, and you hold the line anyway. Livermore never held the line. You still can. So commit right now. Write in the comments, "I will not be Livermore." Make it public. Own it. And let's build a community of traders who learn from the greatest cautionary tale in market history. Not by copying his trades, but by refusing to repeat his mistakes. Because here at Trading Psychology Lab, that is what we are about. Not shortcuts. Not secrets. Mastery. Hit that like button. Subscribe. Drop your city in the comments. And remember this, Jesse Livermore knew everything about the market and nothing about himself. Your edge is building both. 30 days. Hold the line. No excuses.